Welcome to another episode of the Leading Equity. Oh no, this is not the Leading Equity. It's the wrong show. Okay, this is the Art of Advocacy. Oh my gosh, that's what happens when you have two shows. Sometimes you get mixed up. But welcome to the Art of Advocacy. I'm your host, Dr. Sheldon L. Eakins. I am happy to be here. I'm excited. It has been an awesome week. I just got back. I went to Salt Lake City this week. Did some work out there. Also did some work out in the Portland area. Actually, and let me clarify. It wasn't Portland. It was Albany, Oregon. So about an hour and a half away from Portland, but I flew into Portland. So shout out to folks out there at the Linn County Health Department. Great opportunity to chat about microaggressions. We spent the day yesterday talking about microaggressions. It was totally fun. Had some good times. I love the group. Great group. This is actually my second time coming out there. Just lots of jokes, lots of good conversations. Here's the thing. Anytime I do a training, I always talk about the importance of this being a brave space. One of the things I recognize as a trainer is that you have individuals that are going to be in these rooms that are at different levels, right? You got some folks that are brand new. You got some folks that have been, this is their lived experience. You got some folks that have been kind of doing some work on their own, the legwork and all these different type of things. So you have a slew of different levels when it comes to understanding. And it was such a great opportunity. I really had a great time yesterday out there. So shout out to Linn County Department of Health for the work. By the way, if you do need some support, if you're looking for keynotes, if you're looking for trainings, I'm your guy. All right, reach out to Leading Equity Center. We'll be happy to help you out. I love keynoting. I'm actually going to be on stage next week here locally at Idaho State University. I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to be keynoting the diversity conference through the College of Education. So that's going to be fun. I'm really excited for those opportunities. By the way, can't forget, show is sponsored by Leading Equity, Becoming an Advocate for All Students. If you do not have a copy of this book, I just got one simple question. Why? Why don't you have a copy of this book? Listen, what I have done in this book is I've created 10 different steps. I don't believe in checklists. I don't believe that, you do these 10 things, boom, 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 boom. You are certified. You're full-fledged equity advocate. No. There's work that we got to do. And I will say this. I don't think I've arrived. I think that at the end of the day, there's more learning that I can do. There's things that I will never understand. There's things that I will not be able to personally relate to. However, I can try to engage and educate myself and learn as much as I can so I can provide an empathetic approach to any type of situation that's out there. So if you haven't bought the book, please support your boy. By the way, feel free to support this channel. Okay, we're trying to grow the YouTube channel. I love doing the podcast. I've been doing the podcast, Leading Equity Podcast, for 4 years, 4.5 years now these days. And so we're trying to grow the YouTube channel. So I would appreciate if you have not subscribed, if you're not following the channel, please do so. Support your boy. All right, let's get into the topic today. Today, I'm excited because we're going to be talking about supporting our LGBTQ plus community, our students, working with them and providing some opportunities for them to feel supported, not othered, but for them to feel welcomed, included, and valued. That's right, I said it. Valued within your school community. So my special guest today is Farnaz Kaufman. This individual, I'm excited. I mean, we just briefly talked before we went live, and I'm really excited for this. I'm going to read a sentence or two of her bio, and then from there, we're going to bring her on in just a moment. So Farnaz Kaufman is an educational leader and visionary with over 20 years of experience in public education. She started her career as a teacher at Carpenter Avenue Elementary. All right. So without further ado, that's right. Without further ado, we're bringing on Farnaz. Farnaz, welcome to the show. You love the hand claps. I know. I see you smiling over there. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I am excited for this. You and I, you went live with me a couple years ago. And I appreciate that. When we were doing the Art of Advocacy, the virtual summit a couple years back.
Correct.
So now we are doing the official YouTube channel. This is what we do every single week. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing beautifully today, actually. It's a lovely day today in Southern California. And
Oh
so
man.
I'm really excited to be doing this with you.
Every time I hear Southern California, I always think about it never rains in Southern California. That's my jam.
Yeah.
Um, but I just read like one sentence, maybe two sentences of your bio, but I'd love for you to share a little bit more about who you are and what you currently do.
Okay. So currently I am in administration, but I started my career in the classroom. I spent 17 years at the same elementary school, Carpenter, in Studio City, California, where my focus became working with twice exceptional kids. So mostly highly gifted kids with disabilities. And my entire career there, my focus was working on those kids that just didn't fit in the box. My reputation at the school was if you had kids that other teachers didn't understand, that's the class you went to. You went to Miss Kaufman, she would figure it out. So I'm staying in the classroom. I never planned on leaving until I had my own child. And my child uh, identified highly gifted, also identified gender neutral by third grade. And I knew that they needed something different. So I left the district after being a UTLA rep for 10 years. I know. And I actually started a charter school specifically geared towards kids that just didn't fit in the box. And I've been in the charter world since, and since moved into a role where I now support 6 different charter schools. I'm part of their central office kind of position. And in that position, I get to work with their title programs. I work with the dual immersion programs, and I'm part of the equity task force, working on making sure we have DI initiatives in all of our schools and working with them to develop their own equity task force within each site.
So you started a charter school?
Yes, I did.
I had no idea.
I'm that crazy. Yes.
What led you there? How did that happen?
Really my child. It was my kid was came to school with me. I was really lucky. Being a teacher,
Mhm.
I suggested to everyone. My child came to school with me every day. Both my kids did. And my child was in third grade. I was I decided to start my admin program thinking, okay, just at least get the credential. The next year, my child's in fourth grade. I have a project that says, oh, you've started a new school, write the newsletter. And I look at my partner and I thought, yeah. And so that winter break, we wrote a charter and we
Wow.
opened that summer.
Wow. So now you said currently you're over or your role is
Yeah, my little
participating in
school
multiple
merged.
schools.
Yeah, my little school merged with a larger charter organization, I Lead Schools.
Mhm.
And since then, I moved and became the director of the founding school for a couple of years, and then now I work in the I Lead Schools California. I'm the director of global educational initiatives. It's a great title.
So what are the global initiatives?
So a big part of our schools is international learning.
Mhm.
We have our high schools are both IB schools, international baccalaureate
Okay.
programs. So definitely a big part of it. We also do service learning out of the country. We've done several trips to Puerto Rico for service learning, and had trips. We also have a camp in Hawaii where we've done practice and learning there. And then I also sponsor a program right now. We're doing our dual immersion program. Our dual immersion program, I built it over the last 3 years. But what we really wanted was it to be truly international. So our facilitators for the program are visiting teachers from Spain and Mexico. So they are native speakers who come here for 3 years on visas and work with us and develop our program with us.
Listen, I'm impressed.
Thank you.
I'm
I
impressed.
have another side.
I didn't know that. I am impressed. I'm excited for thank you for the work that you're doing. I think it's very valuable when we have, just for me personally, like as an individual who's an advocate for equity work, just hearing what you're doing, starting your own school, getting, involved in multiple schools, IB schools, just the work, bringing in professors and oh man, this is awesome. So, but that's not our topic for today. The thing about it, with all that being said, that's not even what we're talking about today. But I'm impressed. Thank you for the work that you're doing. Hats off to you. I do
Thank you.
appreciate that. But let's get into it because we're talking about LGBTQ plus community student, our students. And, sadly, I will admit, I don't cover this topic enough. I know I don't. I'll admit that. And I want to do better with that. I want to make sure because I get emails every now and then, how come you don't, a lot of the emails I'll get is, you don't talk enough about our deaf and hard of hearing community, and you don't talk enough about our LGBTQ plus community. And so I want to do better in both areas. So I'm glad that you're on the show because I want to talk about that, but I want to kind of lay a little bit of groundwork and just kind of have the audience understand where you're coming from as far as your passion, how you got involved. So why don't you start us off there? What
Sure.
brought you to doing this work?
First and foremost, of course, the biggest reason that I am so passionate and involved is my own child. I'm the parent of a non-binary child who we knew at a very early age was somewhere on the gender spectrum. By age 2, was experimenting with clothing and colors, and although born male, did not always identify that way. And by 3rd grade, had identified gender neutral. So we knew as parents that was something we were going to be handling all the time. But I think my advocacy work dated to even before being a parent. I look at how I was as an educator and who I was as a classroom teacher. And I'm not joking that I really got every kid that every other teacher did not understand, literally. And so that tended to be in an elementary school level, a lot of students who were twice exceptional. So other teachers couldn't understand why such a bright child wouldn't perform. Or I got students who were somewhere on the gender spectrum or on the sexuality spectrum and were trying to figure themselves out and just didn't fit in. And, working with those populations, I kind of found that I was the one who would help them talk to their parents, and I was the one who would help them figure out resources. And so then as my own child found that need by 4th grade and we opened a charter, that was a big focus of the school I opened. And, 20% of our students identified somewhere on the LGBTQ plus spectrum somewhere. So that's a large percentage for a K-8 school. And I found that what was lacking was a place where parents didn't have to fight for their kids' rights to even just exist at those schools, to use the restroom that they chose, to not be outed, etc. And so for me, it was really about developing large spaces where not only did the students feel safe, but the parents felt supported.
Thank you for sharing. Now I'm curious, because you said your child is non-binary. For
Correct.
those who aren't familiar, aren't well aware of what does that mean, can you define that for us?
Yes, I think definitions are the first place to start always. I think before we even define non-binary, we need to define the difference between gender and sexuality.
Okay.
And that's truly where so many misconceptions and so many confusions lie. Sexuality is a person's sexual orientation, whether they're attracted to people of the same gender, other gender, they could be attracted to neither, they could be polyamorous, but that is their sexual attraction. That's their physical and sexual attraction. Gender, however, is how they express themselves. It's who they are on the inside. And it is always separate from their sexuality. And we tend to lump it together, and we really need to split them apart because that's where the nuances are. They are both really, and they're not even, neither of them are a binary system. They are all very spectrum oriented. So you have to think of them as, most people fall towards the end of one or toward side or the other, but there's this whole center area that is where the confusion lies and where our kids are trying to define themselves, where they come up with 1,000,001 terms because they're trying to find their little niche within that spectrum. And so I think that's the first place we start. And then, so when we look at gender, and we're specifically talking about gender, we've grown up in a world that's very binary. You're male, female. And that is what you're born with. That is your genitalia, not your gender. And when we look through history and we look through different cultures, this binary notion was not in existence in other cultures. This was not in existence until the 1800s even. And so we've really developed this rigid binary male female definition. Mm-hmm. And in between all of that are a whole group of people who aren't sure where they fall in because they're not one or the other. And so there we fall into 1,000,001 terms, and there are 1,000,001 terms that these kids have come up with for who they are within there. But the one that seems to be the most prevalent is non-binary, which means you are not male or female. You don't identify with the binary system. You just know you're somewhere in there. And the other one that's somewhat synonymous is gender fluid, which is you go between the two. Purists will argue that gender fluid means you present both ways, and non-binary means that you just present both at the same time. All of that, but really, truly, that's where it falls.
Okay, yeah. So I'm familiar with gender fluid, and I'm familiar with non-binary. So I appreciate you for clarifying that. But I wanted to make sure that our audience had, some, I guess, a starting point as far as understanding some of the ways that our students identify. Now, if I am considering myself as a non-binary, would I be more likely to utilize maybe they or them when it comes to pronouns?
They, them, or Zer are the most common. However, there are people who are non-binary who still choose to use a binary pronoun because it's easier.
Okay.
So again, you can't judge if someone's male or female by looking at them. It's the same with pronouns. It's just how they're choosing to identify. But my child uses they, them, which gets super complicated in conversations, especially when I have two children. People don't know if I'm talking about both of them or one of them quite often. But we found if that's the pronoun they're choosing to use, that is the most important thing we can do is honor it. And we still mess up all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. You're going to, especially if it's your child and you've been used to using one pronoun for a long period of time. The most important thing is that every time you do, you just catch it, apologize, move on. Don't make a big deal, just move on.
I like that. Just catch it, move on. I was sharing with the group yesterday. I said, this is a challenge that I have. I will admit, sometimes with pronouns, I do make mistakes. Because again, based off of how I grew up, based off of stereotypes, I see someone that looks like a male to me, and so therefore I want to use he or him. But this individual might have said, you know what? No, I prefer she or her, or they or them. And so as a result, in my mind, I'm looking at someone that I feel looks like a male. And so I messed that up a lot. And I shared with the group yesterday I was working with, and I said, this is an area that I am working on. I want to be respectful. It would be considered a microaggression if I continue to mess up the pronouns. So that's something I need to work on personally. So I am glad that you are bringing that up. I'm curious. And if you don't want to share, I completely understand. Sure. But as a parent, I would like to kind of know, how did that conversation, because you said back in third grade is when I guess the non-binary, I guess you knew already.
We knew when our child was 2. Yeah. At age 2, we knew. We just kind of were like, okay, well, we'll wait. We'll figure something. We weren't sure if it's gender. We weren't sure if it was sexuality. We weren't sure if it was both. We didn't know. But we knew that at some point they were somewhere on the spectrum, different than how they presented before. So we just were supportive. And I remember, in third grade, my child just commenting, just out of the blue, that they were gender neutral. And we're like, okay. And we let that go. And things continued. And when they actually came out, fully came out and said, I am non-binary, etc., it wasn't till 8th grade. And we were sitting on the couch. Our child walked into the room, announced it. We looked up, we said, okay. And we went back to what we were doing. And they were surprised, well, that's it. We're like, well, we've known, we've been waiting for you to, Yeah. So for us, it wasn't difficult, but I work with a lot of families where they are completely in shock because for them, their child didn't have any signs or exhibit any behavior or anything that they viewed as a different gender or different sexuality. And so that's I think that's where I have found myself doing the majority of my work now is as a teacher, as an administrator, it was creating those safe spaces. It was making sure our kids had places to be. It was training my staff. And now as an administrator and now more in my role now, I find that I'm working with families who are in shock or don't know how to support or don't know what to do, both as a family as well as how do I get what I need for my kid at school?
Okay.
Because that's where it gets difficult. That's where if your child is not in a safe space and you're a parent advocate, that's where it gets difficult. And then there's also the opposite. I do work with staff who are supporting students whose parents aren't supportive and helping them get resources and how do they handle it with the parents without outing the child.
Yeah.
So it's the adults who need help too with this.
Are you seeing a lot of I mean, I guess the question I have then is, are you seeing a lot of parents that aren't accepting?
Oh yeah.
Is that more on that side, or is it more of like, we have a lot of parents that understand and they accepting? Like, is it
The community,
50-50?
it depends on the community.
Okay.
Very honestly, it depends on the community. I've now been an administrator in two very different communities. The school that I started was in a very suburban, fluent neighborhood. It was every parent who came there, they were there to support their kid, and most of them already knew that their child was trans or something, and super supportive. There were a few, but the majority of those families were there for it. I was then at another school where it was very split, and it was in a neighborhood where some of the families were very conservative and very uncomfortable with it. And I had a line outside my door when at our multicultural festival, we had our GSA had a booth, and they didn't understand that there can be an LGBTQ plus culture. So that was fun. So I've done both, and having to support those teachers who, the parents aren't understanding, and the kids will get kicked out if the parents find out. So it depends on the community. It depends on the people there. And at the same time, both exist in every area. So it's just knowing who they are.
Okay. That makes sense. I've had conversations. First of all, I live in a state that is not necessarily the most, how do I want to say this? They're not the most accepting, if you will, as a state, And I know, just, I don't want to get political, but when we think about, there's certain states that aren't as, I guess, open to alternative lifestyles. There's a certain expectation as far as what your lifestyle should be like, what a traditional family looks like or relationships look like. And so as a result, there's some challenges there. And especially when it comes to adolescence, as adults, maybe we'll be a little bit more understanding, but, oh, this child is too young to be making these type of decisions. And so for me, I would like to know, as an educator, as someone who's passionate about doing this equity work, and again, wanting to ensure that all individual needs are being met, what type of language or support could you provide someone like me, who is like, I want to support individuals, your lifestyle, whatever it is, I want to support that, but maybe I'm dealing with a situation where the culture or the community is not accepting. What type of maybe talking points or maybe strategies that you might have available to support folks that are wanting to support our LGBTQ plus students?
The first thing is allyship, number one, and it's one-on-one allyship. You don't have to be going out and changing the world. You're just being there for that child. You're changing their world. So signaling allyship is as simple as the first thing is pronouns. My pronouns are anywhere I have a name tag, anywhere. Every Zoom meeting, in my signature line. If I go to a conference and they hand me a name tag, I put my pronouns on it right away. That is something that right away signals that I'm an ally, and anyone knows that they're safe to talk to me. That simple things like that. The other big thing is giving them a safe space where they can come and know that they can be a confidant. And unless they are threatening their own safety or someone else's safety, that it will stay with you. A lot of our kids, especially when they're going through adolescence and they're not sure and they're trying to figure it out, unfortunately, there aren't any resources out there for them. The first resource they're going to find is probably gay porn, because that's the only thing that they have access to. And so they need to be not shamed. They need to be able to talk. They need to be able to have someone that they can say, hey, this is what I need. This is what I'm going through. This is what I'm thinking. And that you can give them resources that are actually good resources, something through GLAD or something through the local LGBT center, if there is one. And I'll be happy, Sheldon, to share a bunch of resources with you to send to all of your listeners and followers. I've got some lists of some good ones to send out. But really, it's that them knowing that they have someone is everything, because the number one problem with adolescents and our LGBT adolescents specifically is our suicide rate, because they don't feel that they have anyone they can turn to, especially in communities where they know their community won't accept them.
So suicide rates high?
Oh, tremendously high. They are higher with LGBT youth than any other youth.
Because they feel there's, like you said, no support.
And you have to think about how it depends how they're growing up. Our child grew up in a very accepting household where everything was accepted and talked about. So our kid never felt uncomfortable about and they did. I mean, they went through body dysmorphia, but they went through all of their anxiety trying to come out, and they went through so much with that alone. And I saw them go through, 7th grade was horrible, all of that, even in our household. And I think about all these kids who don't have that support, who don't have someone who is there for them, who are growing up in a household where they are hearing that what they are feeling inside is wrong, and who they feel like they are inside is not acceptable. And so they don't feel that they can be who they are. They feel horrible. They feel evil. They feel they feel despair. And so they don't feel worthy of their life because they can't change to be who they think they're supposed to be.
Wow.
That's the reality of it.
Whew, okay.
Yeah, heavy.
That's heavy. That is heavy. I'm not gonna lie. Shout out to Jennifer. I'm a school counselor who facilitates gender support plans and presents statewide on LGBTQ plus support legal topics. So happy we're talking about this. Yeah. Thank you, Jennifer, for listening.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah. That is heavy. And I could only imagine 12 years old, 11 years old, not feeling like you have that support.
And they know, and a lot of them start feeling it. I mean, think about, as a cisgendered male, at what point did you start realizing girls? Probably kindergarten. Okay. Yeah. So that's age 5, 6. That's not even adolescence. Okay. And so someone who isn't feeling that and not feeling the same as their peers is starting to already question themselves. At what age do we condition our kids to decide that, if you're a boy, you're playing with cars and Legos and you're wearing blue and green. And if you're a girl, you're playing with Barbie dolls and you're wearing pink. And I mean, we do this automatically in our culture. And so these kids are getting these signals from a very early age that how they're feeling inside is contrary to the rest of the world.
Okay. Folks, if you're listening, if you got some questions, especially if you're an educator, you're or counselor, whatever it is, whatever position you're in, feel free to drop some questions or comments in, and we'll definitely make sure that we get to them. So just want to just throw that out there as well. I'm curious. You mentioned that you did have some resources available. Let's say I'm a teacher. I want to be supportive. What type of resources would you recommend for educators that are, again, trying to support our students?
Okay. Number one, I'd suggest that educators educate themselves on the vocabulary, the language, understanding the development of it all. There's a lot to learn in that. And it could be quick, there's a great graphic out there called the Gingerbread Man. I'll share that with you, that shows all the different spectrums within the person. Something as simple as just educating yourself on that language is a good start. After that, I think the next thing is, as far as resources go, is having resources for your students. having books in your libraries that are about either diversity within the families, diversity within even non-gender specific characters, and then authors as well, so that they are seeing themselves in the literature and they're seeing themselves in their regular world. We don't need to make it something special. It doesn't need to be different, because then we're othering it again. So if we're including it, like everything, and making it inclusive of what we're doing in our normal day-to-day, that's what our kids are going to want. They're going to need that. And then third is the biggest resource that I can always recommend is knowing where your regular LGBT centers are. If you have any parent support groups in your area that you can recommend to parents, any student support groups in your area, those are the best starting points. And then when you're ready for the big step, starting a GSA at your site, making sure there's a safe space. And GSAs can be started at an elementary school level. Yes, that's my person.
That's it right there. Can you walk us through this?
Yeah, I have to, I have to be able to see. So
it's slow. I don't know how big it is for you.
It's a little small on my screen.
Okay.
I could do it. Yeah. So when we're looking at the gingerbread person, this is a great representation of understanding all the different parts of a human being. Because as I said earlier, when we talk about LGBTQIA, we tend to put it all in one thing, and a person is one thing, and we're not. We're all a big spectrum of things. So first is your identity, your gender identity, how you identify as a person. When I think about myself, do I think of myself as XYZ, wherever on the spectrum? Gender attraction, that's your sexuality, who you're attracted to. And again, it could be male, female, both, neither, etc. Gender expression is how you look on the outside. So as you were saying, Sheldon, someone who presents male but identifies female, and how hard it is to remember those pronouns because you're used to them and you look at them and they identify male. And I know several people like that, and who, you automatically have to remember that how they're expressing themselves is not necessarily how they identify. And then the sex, which is what they are born with. What is your actual genitalia? Again, not connected always to all the rest of those things. And so when we think about our LGBTQ plus learners, we have to be able to know which of these we are talking about at which time and in relation to each other.
Now, do our students know this? Here's the thing, because do they know about the gingerbread? Like, how are they learning this?
Internet.
You understand where I'm coming from? Like,
Internet.
like, do they understand what's happened? Like, I'm trying to figure out the best way to frame this question. But
they don't.
Okay.
They don't. They're figuring it out.
Okay.
I know exactly what they're figuring it out. They don't know, like, oh, I'm born with this and I'm attracted. No, they don't know that. That's exactly what the confusion is, because they live in a world where if you're male, you're attracted to female, you look male, you have male genitals. And if you're female, you're attracted to male and you have female genitals, you look and you express yourself as a female. So they are used to this very binary definition, and they don't know where they stand, because one of those things or multiple of those things is not akin to the other. And so that is what they're struggling with. And that's what they're trying to figure out. And they have no resources unless they have an adult that can be there for them. They are searching this stuff all online and they're finding whatever they can. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm grateful for TikTok. TikTok has been an excellent resource for our kids. Our kids are able to find what they need on there, and they are finding more on there than anywhere else. And they are finding communities, they're reaching out to each other, they're creating affinity groups. It has been very helpful for them to have that. But for the kids who are more shy and reserved and aren't going to put themselves out there, they're even more isolated.
Got you. All right. Well, I just dropped the link in the chat or in the comments for folks who want to find the gingerbread. Or gender. I'm saying gingerbread. Gingerbread person. Okay. I'm reading this terribly. By it's pronounced metrosexual. Okay. .com. So that link is there. Here's a question that I have. I know there's a lot of educators that want to support our LGBTQ plus students. However, the challenge is maybe they're afraid to support them or provide them with these type of resources without parents pushing back or saying, why would you teach them this? This is not something we believe. There's that fear that if I share this, I want to support my students, but I don't know what the support is at home. And so I don't want to overstep my boundaries as an educator because I'm not the biological parent and I don't want to put myself in a bad spot, but I want to support my kids, but I know at home there's support. You understand where I'm coming from with this? Like,
Yeah,
I
I
know
understand,
this it's got to be
but
a thing.
I understand, but I'm gonna play devil's advocate in that
Okay.
if that child has absolutely no support at home, and now
Mhm.
you're saying that I know this child has no support and needs support, but I'm not going to give it to them because I'm scared
Mm.
of this other person, then I am again turning my back on that child.
Mm.
I've risked my neck multiple
There you
times.
go. There you go.
I've put myself in those positions. I've had parents yell and scream at me. The only thing I can express to them every time they do that is that the beauty of a safe space is that you're allowed to have your opinion too.
Yeah.
And that's all I say to them. And that's all I will give them. It's hard. It's hard. I know it's hard because we have those. I've had parents yell at me. I had a parent pull their kid out of my school and flip out on me and post all kinds of things online about me. It happens. That child is now an adult and has reached out to me for help again. So that child knew I was there. So whether I was able to help them then or not, they knew they had someone. And sometimes that's all they need.
So what I'm hearing is that's a cop out. That's an excuse.
Yeah, sorry. That's like saying you're not going to. So I'm going to be blunt. That's like saying I'm not going to teach about racism because I'm worried these parents are going to come yell at me.
Yeah.
Fuck that. Sorry, but I'm teaching it. Like my kids come first. I'm there to service them. I'm not there to service the parents.
I'm with you. And as educators, we're supposed to be there for our kids, and especially that one or two, small population of students maybe that are in these situations, they need at least one adult. Are you not going to be that one adult for them? Because if you don't do it, who will? And I think you have a valid point. You know what? That's an excuse. Stand in there, but I can see a teacher say, "Well, my job. I don't want to put my job on the line if I advocate for a student when I know the parents aren't going to be supportive of it. I don't want to get myself in trouble."
Depends. It depends on your definition of advocacy. I'm not telling you to out the child and make sure the whole school knows. We're telling you to be that child's advocate, that if when that child's around you, you use the pronouns they choose to use. When that child needs someone to talk to, you're there for them. When that child is telling you about their new boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, whatever, that you're listening to them and you're supportive. That's what they need. They need to know that someone understands them. They need to know that they can use the bathroom that they need to use. That's it. Make sure that they have access to the bathroom they choose to use. It's not, again, it's the littlest things right now. If we're at that point where all these kids need is to know that their schools are safe for them to be their authentic selves. That's it.
That's it.
That's it. Simple.
Okay. How about our language? Are there some things that we are saying in school, in our classrooms, or in our everyday experiences that we should be considering?
We all do it. Boys and girls being the most common one, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, we do binary language constantly. I do it all the time. I say guys all the time. I've been working on that.
Yeah, I work on that.
That's been mine. I tried y'all. I'm a person immigrant. Y'all doesn't work for me. It just doesn't sound right on me. So I couldn't do that one. Folks seems to be the most gender neutral term for kids. Folks. I refer to mine as learners, my students, and they've always just been my children. My students know that I've always referred to them as my children. So it's kind of a little different. But kids, anything that's not gender specific is the first thing to stay away from. And then the other part is really honestly being careful to not keep referring to whatever part of the either gender spectrum or sexuality spectrum these children are identifying on. Don't make it the focus of every conversation. Don't keep bringing it up. If you misgender them, just like I said, quickly correct it and move on. Don't draw more attention to it. Don't make it a bigger deal, because then you're putting the onus of it on them. You're making them feel guilty that they're putting you through all of this trouble to try to correct them, remember the pronouns.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just, those are the biggest things.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious about that because I'd say you guys a lot. I say guys a lot. And I'm constant. The other day, for example, and this may not be related, but it's maybe a little bit related from a gender side of things. I remember I went to an event and I saw a woman that I knew, and I said, "Oh wow, you're manning the table." And I was like, like afterwards, like I've had a whole conversation and I left, and then afterwards I was like, oh shoot, that was very not thinking, but I'm just, again, a lot of things that I'm used to saying growing up in those kind of common language. I was like, should I go back to this individual and apologize? I was like,
but it's about practice, not perfection, right? We're all works in progress, constantly working on it. The fact that you recognized it, the fact that you took the moment to like acknowledge it within yourself, to realize, hey, I said this, that's exactly it. You acknowledged it and you moved on. You don't make a big deal about it. But the next time you're going to be cognizant of that. So that's exactly what this is. It's the same thing. We're all going to make mistakes, especially with genders. We're going to mess up their pronouns constantly. My child, it's been 5 years and I still mess up my child's pronouns constantly, especially when talking about when they were younger. It's a real difficult thing to do. And that's part of it. Or I have a old learner who does drag, and remembering which pronoun to use when they're in depending on how they're presenting at that time, and constantly keeping track of that. So you're going to make mistakes. But it's that effort. It's the fact that you're putting yourself out there, again, like putting your pronouns anywhere and everywhere, just making that. It's like that signaling of, I'm your person. I'm your support person. I get it. I'm there. I know what you're talking about.
Got you. Okay. All right. So, because I almost went back. To the table. I was like, you know what? I'm sorry. I said manning the table, but then I was like, they didn't, just something going forward. Don't do it again. Basically, at the end of the day, that's kind of where I was at. I was like, just don't do that stuff again. I almost cussed. Don't do that stuff again. And then you'll be okay. I want to ask you about affinity spaces or affinity groups, gay student alliances, those type of groups. How important do you believe that those are to have in your schools?
Incredibly important. First of all, it signals to the community that you're supportive. And so when students are looking for schools, that's one of the things they are looking for. Some of them are doing it without their parents knowing, and that's important to do. The other part is to make sure that it's started and run by learners, by the students.
Yeah.
It is not an adult function. It is a student function. And having an advisor there present, but really making sure the kids, it's their space to do what they need within the group. And I've seen combinations. I've seen specific gay student alliances. I've seen gay straight alliances. I've seen ones that are just LGBTQ plus only. I've seen ones that are for allies, LGBTQ plus and allies. All of it works. It's just what your learners want, what they want, what their needs are, what are their expressions that they're looking for. And again, on that one, I'd be happy to share a resource. My child created an entire resource on how to start a GSA at your school because they did it. And when asked for it by a couple other people, so they created a quick little outline on how to do it for a student. So I will share that along. I'm sure they'd be thrilled to have that shared too, because they need to know, again, it's a space for them to have the conversations they need to have. And 9 out of 10 times, I can tell you that the majority of groups that I've seen at the schools, they do things like just presenting about different LGBTQ artists or people in different industries, or watching a movie, or doing a book study, or arts and crafts, whatever. And then sometimes it's deep discussion because they need a topic that they have to talk about. So allowing them that flexibility where that group authentically and organically becomes what those kids need, it will change, it will ebb and flow, and it'll be theirs.
Now I could hear, so how do I want to frame this? Okay. It's in my head. Okay. So I could see there might be a school, or maybe we have not identified an openly out individual who's part of the community, but we want to have this advisory. We want this program. We want this alliance, this affinity space. We have not been able to identify, or maybe there is someone who is there, but they're just unavailable to run the group. Is it okay for a straight person, someone who is not part of the community, to lead or serve as an advisor? What type? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
100%.
Okay.
I think 100% it's you're serving as an ally. And at that point, if your school is not there yet, where people are comfortable enough, where the students know, I mean, the students at my school knew that we had trans staff members. They were out and very open about it.
Sure.
It was easy for that. But if your school is not there yet, then you're not there yet. You start where you're at. And it might be that you're not even ready for a full GSA yet. It might be that what you're ready for is a few teachers that just start putting their pronouns or just start putting safe space flyers in their windows. That's it. That might be all you're ready for right now, is a safe space where people could drop in and talk. And then moving forward, like it's again, it's like anything in education. We have to meet the kids where they're at.
Yeah.
Like we can't have these benchmarks of every school should have X, Y, Z. Like you said, it's the same with any equity work. You can't be like, oh, you do this, this, and this, and this happens. It's an organic process that lives in who are you serving? Who's your community? Who are your students? Who are their families? Who is your staff? What are your local resources? And all of that put together, what are the needs of these kids?
What are the needs of these kids? I like that. Now, I think I've kind of thrown out a couple questions for some strategies, but are there some specific strategies that you want to provide our educators with that we have not discussed yet?
I'll just keep pushing pronouns. Okay. Honestly, like I can't even push that enough. It's in my signature line, even with a document click where you could click and it says why they're important. So truly that is something I always will push. And second is signaling that you're a safe space. If it could be as simple as hanging a rainbow flag somewhere in your room. It could be as simple as getting one of the Glisten or GLAD flyers that says this is a safe space. And just outwardly welcoming your kids first, because it's going to take a while for them to, even with families, when kids come out, they talk about how there's this whole coming in process before they come out. Like there's this whole self-discovery, and they go through usually 2 years of self-discovery before they ever come out to someone. So knowing that while your kids are going through that self-discovery, before they're ready to do this full formal coming out, you want to have them to know that this is a safe space and be able to support their coming in. And so I truly believe that's a really important place to start, is making sure they know that they are safe, that they have a safe space, that you are an ally, and then go from there.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So, but I would say, and I'm assuming you would agree, having a flag, saying I'm a safe space is not enough.
No, that's just the start.
Okay.
That's just the start. I mean, I'm telling you, that's just the start. After that comes whatever they need. I mean, that's where you start seeing where the needs are. At my first school, elementary school, the need for these kids, for most of them, was just a place to gather and meet other kids. And so my classroom became where all the kids hung out at lunchtime. And these kids knew that they could meet others that were different and they could come hang out. So it was giving them a space, not just me as a person, but a safe space for a community to start building. It could be as simple as, hey, they're going to come to you with their issues. If you're welcoming, they're going to come. You're going to have to let them come to you and be there for them. And the things that are going to arise, number one is going to be bathrooms. The number of times kids are not allowed to go to the bathroom that they choose because someone perceives that they are a different gender, or that because they have a different sexuality, they're going to look at your child, or any of that other bullshit. Sorry, but really, that is the first thing, making sure they know that they can use the bathroom of whoever, wherever they identify at that time. And I want to stress at that time.
At that time.
Because kids will change. Yeah. And some kids will, try on multiple genders and personas and understandings of themselves as they're going through this discovery. I mean, think about when we're growing up, how many different styles of clothing did we go through, right? There's some outfits that I can't believe I even would dare put on my body, especially as a teenager. And these kids are going through the same thing. They're trying on these different roles and personas, trying to find themselves. And that's going to be part of it. So allow them that freedom to do that. It's not going to harm them. It's going to be safer if they know that they can express themselves and figure it out with you.
I wonder what kind. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just thinking, like, as I'm listening to that, I feel like we're doing a lot of support for our teachers or our educators in regards to what we can do as adults to support our students. But I wonder what type of conversations maybe we should have with their peers, their classmates. 100%. How do we support? Because it's one thing for us as adults to understand and be there and support and allies and all those things. But what are some things that we can do to, again, help them feel included or welcomed within the school or classroom community?
It's making it normalized. It's anytime a child brings it up, it's making sure that the conversation happens where it is very normalized. Mm-hmm. If a child says, oh, but Johnny was he yesterday, why is Johnny now Jeanette and she today? And the response being, depending on the age group, as simple as, well, it's really beautiful that each of us gets to discover who we are as a person. And Jeanette has chosen to identify as Jeanette and use she and her today. So really just as simple as honoring them that this is their choice and this is who they are authentically, and not letting kids have and allowing the conversations depending on its age appropriate. Again, if we are exposing our kids to books with other genders within them, if we are exposing our kids to books with children with two fathers or two mothers at a younger age, just like if we're exposing them to books that have other cultures within them, then they're not going to fear it. And that's where it always comes from. It's always from a place of fear and a fear of the unknown. Mm-hmm. But if our kids in kindergarten have been looking at picture books that have gender neutral characters in it, by the time they're in 3rd or 4th grade and Johnny's now switching to Jeanette, they're not going to even notice it. And that's what I saw with my child. None of their friends even batted an eyelash. That, like, nothing. It was the most organic process at this school. And I watched all of these different kids come into who they were in an environment that was so supportive that not a single other child questioned it. And that's what we want.
Yeah, that's ideally in a perfect world.
Yeah. So libraries is a big thing. There's a group out there called Gender Nation that will do free libraries for schools. So I strongly suggest you reach out to them. They are an incredible resource. And they have done libraries for districts. They've done libraries for kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade classrooms. They start primary, which is one of the things I love about them. And then, having resources and exposure within the classroom. So making sure our kids learn about, when I taught 5th grade for a long time and then 8th grade, and 5th and 8th grade history, Civil War, right? Mm-hmm. Fun subject to teach. But my favorite part of teaching about it was I love teaching about Loretta Boyd, who was a spy who, during the war and dressed as a male and was actually a very gender fluid person if you do research and et cetera, et cetera. But that was one of the things that I loved, was I was able to give my students a character that they could identify with in history within whatever they were studying. It's the same thing when we were reading. Anytime we were reading, if we were reading an author that was an LGBTQ plus author, I made sure my kids knew that. Yeah. I wouldn't hide it. I would highlight it. We would talk about it. We would talk about their lifestyle. Oh, wow. How hard must it have been to write this book at that time, identifying this way? Having those cultural deep conversations on a regular basis. And this is beyond just, what can I do? One-offs like PDs. It's about, as an educator, when we work with our kids, when we talk to our kids, making sure that everything we're discussing with them, we go in with a cultural lens of them understanding not only their own culture and where they fit in, but also the culture of whatever we are talking about and how that relates, so that our kids are growing up accepting and feeling inclusive and understanding of all others.
Okay. Right. Yeah. I got a lot of thoughts. I'm just curious. Obviously, the conversation with high schoolers or middle schoolers are going to be different than
Yes.
your elementary kids. Do you believe that our early childhood, elementary, should have some of these, initial conversations?
I think when they arise organically.
Okay.
I don't believe anything should be ever introduced in a vacuum, because what's the point? Because then that's when there's an ulterior motive or it doesn't make sense. Kids don't connect to it. But yeah, when it comes up organically, when you're reading a book and the character is identifying gender neutral and stopping the class to say, if a child asks what it means or why, then you have the conversation. You're going to allow their self-discovery and their questions to guide it.
Got you. Okay. Okay. Are there any maybe textbooks or maybe not textbooks, but reading material that you would recommend, like a certain book that you would recommend?
Unfortunately, there's little that's comprehensive in this, because this is, again, what you were saying. A lot of people are scared to write about and work on this. It's one of those taboo subjects because people are afraid that they're going to offend someone, especially when it's such a broad subject. We've taken gender, sexuality, attraction, genitalia, all of it, and lumped it into one big category. So I think most importantly is small resources.
Okay.
Listen resources are number one. And like I said, I'll send those to you and your followers and readers. And then the second would be whatever LGBT center or any type of, here we have a group in Southern California called Transforming Families. That's a parent support group for trans students, parents of trans children. I cannot talk enough about them. They are the number one resource here in Southern California for trans families. But anything that's out there, connecting with them, because they will come to your site. They will support you. Our local LGBT center got several funds for us to build a GSA hangout space. And they got it funded completely through Target and I want to say Bank of America. So there are resources out there in your area that you want to reach out to pull them into. So it's not just you doing the work alone.
Okay. Farnaz, I definitely consider you as providing a voice in leading equity. I'd love for you to maybe share any final thoughts, final word of advice that you want to provide to our listeners out there.
Love them. Love them. Because that's all they're trying to do. They want love and acceptance, just like all of us.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Just like all of us. If we got some folks that want to connect with you, what's the best way to reach you online?
The best way is Instagram. And you can search for my name. I am on Instagram or on Twitter. I'm on both. And then you can also send me an email. My email is really easy. It's my name, farnaz.kaufman@gmail.com.
There it is. Well, it has truly been a pleasure. I definitely appreciate your time. Thank you for enlightening us.
Thank you for having me. I am so blessed to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, pleasure's all mine. Pleasure's all mine. So thank you. All right. Take care. All right, folks. Very enlightening. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me was the importance of making sure that we get those pronouns correctly. Starting there. And then we can further educate ourselves from there. We will definitely have some resources. If you subscribe to the Weekend Voice, our newsletter every Friday that comes out, I'll definitely be addressing that and providing some thoughts for tomorrow's newsletter. And you can always subscribe to that online at leadingequitycenter.com. But pronouns to me was one of my biggest takeaways. And I really enjoyed the fact that Farnaz took the time to really go through what binary means, gender fluid means, just providing some of that language and understanding some of those definitions. I think those are really important. I think for those who aren't as familiar, but you want to know, you want to be supportive of your students, you recognize that our kids aren't all the same. You recognize that, our kids, some kids like this, some kids like that. And some kids are still trying to figure it out. They're kids at the end of the day. They're kids, right? And they're just a lot of us are, they're just trying to figure things out. And I think just being understanding of that is really important. And so, very good. I would say really good takeaways from today's conversation. So, as always, don't forget, if you haven't gotten the book already, Leading Equity, Becoming an Advocate for All. That's right, all students, right? Becoming an advocate for all students. If you haven't gotten that book, Make sure you grab the book, support your boy. Follow the channel. Follow every single Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern. We go live. Support the channel as well. Remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But by all means, keep moving. Let's continue to be a voice of leading equity.